This meeting of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach is now in session. This is our formal meeting format. At this time, I ask that my colleagues and everyone in attendance please silence their electronic devices and phones. I ask my colleagues to acknowledge their presence on the voting board. Please note in the minutes that Mr. Edwards and Mrs. Manning are absent this evening. At this time, I'm asking everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Please rise as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now proceed with our awards and recognitions. Mrs. Melnick.
Of the 11 statewide awards presented by the Virginia Association for the Gifted this year, 4 of them were awarded to individuals who are a part of Virginia Beach City Public Schools. The school board is honored to recognize them this evening, starting with Cameron Conger, who was named the Outstanding Middle High School Student of the Year. A freshman at Kellam High School this year, Cameron earned this award this summer for her contributions as a student at Old Donation School. Known by many for her big smile and ease in interacting with both peers and adults, Cameron was selected as a student ambassador for her good citizenship and scholastic achievement. Cameron also dedicates countless hours volunteering in the community, including at the Pungo Senior Resource Center reading bingo numbers, at the Princess Anne Library with their Summer Reading Challenge, at the Museum of Contemporary Art assisting art teachers, and at Creeds Elementary School with their preschool powwow and reading month books. It's easy to see why she is the Outstanding Student of the Year. Congratulations, Cameron.
Virginia Association for Gifted Parent of the Year. Our next honoree, unfortunately, was unable to join us. However, we did want to congratulate Ann Filiberti as the Virginia Association for the Gifted 2018 Parent of the Year. She is a parent at Old Donation School who has served on the PTA board and works diligently on the school scholarship program. Our sincere congratulations to her.
We are now proud to honor the Virginia Association for the Gifted Teacher of the Year for Region 2, Jamie LaCava Owen, Gifted Resource Teacher at Princess Anne High School. For her recognition, we would like to read to you excerpts of a letter written by a student for this award. On behalf of numerous Princess Anne students, Mrs. Lowe has left her mark on the lives of many. Although she doesn't teach a class of her own, Mrs. Lowe frequently creates lesson plans and interacts with students in a variety of classes that prompt students to think critically. Furthermore, she fosters academic success by genuinely taking a true interest in the students' passions, no matter how silly they may seem. She makes a constant effort to reach out to as many students as possible while also organizing citywide forums and conferences to keep parents involved. Additionally, she makes PA a welcoming school that is rich in opportunities by putting endless hours into student activities. I can confidently say that I am not the only one affected by Mrs. Lowe's love and guidance. Every time I walk by her office, there is always a student present seeking her advice. She is the most influential teacher I have ever met. Oh, that was so great. Congratulations to Mrs. Lowe for being named Region 2's Gifted Teacher of the Year.
And for our final recognition, we welcome a familiar face and are proud to recognize the Virginia Association for the Gifted 2018 Leader of the Year, Dr. Valika Gatling. Although she's no longer with the school division, her contributions as the executive director for the Office of Programs with Exceptional Children will have a lasting impact. She led policy change that increased the number of underrepresented students identified for gifted services. She helped parents when they needed, even posting applications online and adding a guidance staff member to the Community Advisory Committee for Gifted Education. To help teachers and administrators, she implemented new training focused on identifying the characteristics of gifted children so that more students would be recommended for intellectual testing. Her staff is appreciative that Dr. Gatling has brought countless professional development opportunities, collegial dialogue, and involvement on parent committees. A school principal said it best, "As a leader, Dr. Gatling is truly transformational." Congratulations for being named Virginia's Gifted Association 2018 Leader of the Year.
Dr. Spence, we look forward to hearing the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairwoman Anderson and members of the board. And I want to thank you for the time to share 5 things our community needs to know right now about Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And number 1, I obviously want to highlight the tremendous work of our teachers, staff members, and administrators as we opened schools last week for the 2018-19 school year. It was, once again, one of the smoothest openings I've ever been able to be part of. Every single school that I visited, I was able to see excited students who were eager to be there and get their year started, and they were greeted by enthusiastic and smiling staff at the schools who were really ready for them to be there. It was a great first day and a great first week of school, and I want to thank all of our families, our staff members, and our students for a terrific start to the school year. At number 2, I want to remind our 5th grade families that for the 3rd year in a row, all of our 5th grade students are invited to the Naval Air Station Oceana for a Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Lab Learning Day. On Friday, September 21st, students will head to Oceana and take part in a series of hands-on learning stations, meet STEM leaders throughout the military and Hampton Roads community, and see a special performance by the Navy's elite flight demonstration team, the Blue Angels. 5th grade families are reminded to turn in their permission forms in order to take part in this great event. 3rd, beginning on Monday, September the 17th, all of our schools will be fully utilizing our new buzz-in locking system, which requires all guests and visitors to use a video intercom system in order to enter the building. A great number of our schools were able to start using the system on the first day of school, and now, fully 3 months ahead of schedule, all schools will be operating by Monday the 17th. I want to thank our teams in maintenance services and school safety for all of their work and leadership in getting this initiative activated and in place for this school year. 4th, I am happy to help recognize some of our board members who are here tonight. The Virginia School Boards Association has named the honorees for its annual VSBA Academy Awards. These awards recognize board members for their dedication, time, and hard work in improving boardsmanship skills through VSBA meetings, conferences, board development, and training and active involvement in the association. It should be noted that the awards are based on participation for July 1 to June 30th. Earning an award of recognition are Ms. Dottie Holtz, Ms. Kim Melnick, Ms. Trinace Riggs, and Ms. Carolyn Weems. Earning an award of excellence and a silver pin this year are Chairwoman Beverly Anderson, Vice Chair Joel McDonald, Dan Edwards, Ashley McLeod, and Ms. Carolyn Rye. And earning a gold pin and award of honor is Ms. Sharon Felton. So congratulations to all of you. I believe that those certificates and awards are at your space on the dais. Finally, tonight at number 5, I do want to close my report on this important note. We are actively monitoring the weather forecast for Hurricane Florence, and we are putting our best efforts into every preventative measure that we have. As you know, today school was closed for our students after receiving the governor's mandatory evacuation notice for a portion of our city. We felt we needed to support our families and community as they made decisions to protect themselves against this incoming storm, along with most of the other school divisions with folks living in Zone A. Our staff members today in our buildings have been preparing classrooms and offices, moving and covering computers and desks to minimize any potential damage that we might see, all of which is part of our emergency preparedness plan. All of our teams in school division services and school leadership have been working to operationalize those response plans and best practices for weathering the storm. I'd also like our community to please note that the city will open Kellam High School as a shelter tomorrow night. Corporate Landing Middle and Old Donation Schools will be opened as shelters on Thursday, and then Tallwood, Lansdowne, and Green Run High Schools as Friday as of this moment. Please let me echo again what we've shared over the past 2 days, and that is that we urge all of our families to take every necessary precaution as this storm begins to make its way to shore. And we will be communicating with our community through our available channels, Alert Now, vbschools.com, and social media. And we also encourage folks to pay attention to VB.gov and to any of the national services as well. And of course, once we make any decisions about returning to school, we will get those out through our regular channels as quickly as possible. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. That does complete my report.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on agenda items this evening?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Thank you. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve our minutes from the August 28th meeting. The motion is made by Mrs. Holtz, seconded by Ms. Riggs. The voting board is open. Colleagues, we were all sent an email from Mrs. Linetti this past week asking to add the reimbursement of attorney's fees for 2 of our employees. If there is no objection, I would like to add the 2 reimbursement fees to the consent agenda as item 11F on the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended for this evening. Motion is made by Mrs. McLeod, seconded by Mrs. Melnick. Voting board is open. The agenda has been adopted. We have 2 resolutions for item 11A this evening on the consent agenda. The chair recognizes Mrs. McLeod to read the resolution for National Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you very much. Whereas one of our nation's greatest strengths is its vast diversity, which enables Americans to see the world from many viewpoints, and whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans have forged a proud legacy that reflects the spirit of our nation and community, and whereas it is imperative for the good of our nation that schools continue to build awareness and understanding of the contributions made by people from all cultures and backgrounds, and whereas through the study of these contributions, students may find role models whose participation, commitment, and achievement embody the American spirit and ideals, and whereas the School Board of Virginia Beach recognizes the importance of multicultural diversity education within our school division. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach officially recognizes September 15th through October 15th as National Hispanic Heritage Month. And be it further resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach encourages all citizens to support and participate in the various school activities available during National Hispanic Heritage Month. And be it further resolved that the copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board.
Thank you, Mrs. McLeod. The chair recognizes Mr. McDonald to read the resolution for Suicide Prevention Week.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of deaths in the United States, and the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 15 to 24. And whereas suicide is now the second leading cause of death in the state of Virginia among individuals between the ages of 15 to 24. And whereas suicide strikes without regard to locality, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, religious preference, or age. And whereas in the United States, 1 person completes suicide every 12.8 minutes, and there are 10 to 20 suicide attempts per each suicide completion. And whereas education and community involvement are known to be the most crucial factors in preventing suicide. And whereas the school board of the City of Virginia Beach is focused on ways to educate students, parents, and school staff about suicide and prevention of suicide. And whereas Virginia Beach City Public Schools, through sustained and dedicated efforts, has implemented programs for all employees and students that recognize a deep commitment at all levels to raise awareness of suicide and its prevention. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach designates the week of September 9th through 15th, 2018 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Week in the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and be it further resolved that the strategies and activities to address suicide prevention and suicidal behaviors be ongoing in Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of this board.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Also, the consent agenda has item 11B, Student Response Teams Evaluation Readiness Report. Item 11C, Lead Aspiring Administrators Program Evaluation Readiness Report. Item 11D as Program Evaluation Schedule for 2018-2019. Item 11E, Long Range Facilities Plan. And item 11F, which was just added this evening, as reimbursement of legal fees. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Mrs. Holtz has made the motion, seconded by Ms. Weems. The voting board is open. The consent agenda has been approved. Under action this evening, we only have one item, and it's the personnel report and administrative appointments. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the personnel report and administrative appointments. Mrs. Rye has made the motion, seconded by Mrs. McLeod. The motion, is there any discussion? Seeing none, the voting board is open. Dr. Spence, would you like to introduce our new administrators?
I most certainly would. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. In fact, just this evening, we have one. If I could ask Anna Surratt to please stand. You all will recognize Mrs. Surratt. She served as a teacher in California and North Carolina, but certainly here in Virginia Beach with distinction at Lynn Haven Middle School. She's been a teacher leader, a mathematics specialist at the Bayside 6th grade campus, an assistant principal, and most recently has been serving as a professional learning specialist in the Office of Professional Growth and Innovation. And I'm very pleased that this evening you've accepted our recommendation for her to serve as the new coordinator of professional learning in the Office of Professional Growth and Innovation. Congratulations. And while I will note that you don't have guests with you, you do have all of your colleagues from PGI here to support you as well. And so we're grateful to you all for the work that you do. I do also want to point out that this evening you also accepted our recommendation for the new Director of Technology Infrastructure, and that is Mr. David Dinh. He's currently serving as a technical manager for SAIC and has served in that capacity with Northrop Grumman, and also as an assistant IT operations manager for the Virginia Employment Commission. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. The first item under information this evening is the budget calendar for fiscal year 2019-2020. Mr. Honziger.
Good evening, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chair McDonald, members of the school board, and Dr. Spence. The calendar that you have before you and is presented as information tonight contains the specific dates and timeframes for the key components and activities of the budget development process. It's an important guide for administration and the school board regarding the schedule and the events in the budget process that ultimately will result in approval of a proposed budget. I'll just point out several of the key items in the budget calendar. If you'll go to the November 20th, we'll be presenting a joint briefing, the 5-year forecast with the city staff. December the 11th is the first public hearing we'll have on the proposed budget, well, actually on the budget. proposed budget won't be approved at that time. You'll note that February 5th begins the process for the school board. We'll be presenting the superintendent's assessment of needs on that date. By the way, that's a non-scheduled board meeting date. You recall when we went to the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday, that's one of the results of that. You'll note that every Tuesday after that February 5th, you'll have a budget workshop, and you're scheduled on March the 5th. If you need another workshop, you would have a workshop. That's also the date you're scheduled to approve the operating budget and the CIP. We will be then sending your approved budget to the city on or about March 12th. We'll have a presentation to the city council sometime in April, a date to be determined. By state code, the council has to approve the budget by May the 15th. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Have any questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Honsiker.
Thank you.
Next, the next item for information is the Standards of Learning Student Performance for 2017-18. Ms. Legata, thank you.
Good evening. Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chair McDonald, members of the board, Dr. Spence. This evening, I will present to you Virginia's 2017-18 annual pass rate data for Virginia Beach City Public Schools. We will compare these rates to the state, and you will hear from Teaching and Learning about some of the items that are in place to help address the areas of focus that you'll hear about. Annual pass rates were released publicly by the Virginia Department of Education on August 22nd, and we will start tonight talking about those pass rates that were released. The pass rates that you see tonight are not calculated based on the rules from either state accreditation or federal accountability. Virginia releases annual pass rates that are published on their website and are part of the Virginia's school quality profiles. This evening, we'll review these annual pass rates. And when we look at these rates, each year, typically, we make comparisons from one year to the next. And for the past several years, the methodology that the state of Virginia uses to determine these pass rates has been consistent, and that is up until the 17-18 annual pass rates, where the methodology has changed. So for that reason, we are going to look at just 1 year of data. The tables on the screen represent SOL pass rates in reading and in writing. On the left of each chart is the test, and on the right is the pass rate. The pass rate for reading ranged from 81% in grade 3 reading to 91% in end of course reading. As you see on the slide, all reading pass rates were above 80% for an overall reading pass rate of 86%. In writing, the grade 8 pass rate was 77%, while for end of course writing, the pass rate was 89% for an overall writing pass rate of 83%. In mathematics, pass rates ranged from 69% on the grade 7 math SOL test to 92% in Algebra 2. All but 2 math tests had pass rates at or above 80% with an overall math pass rate of 83%. In the area of history, pass rates ranged from 78% in World History 2 to 93% in Geography. Other than World History 2, all pass rates for history were at or above 80%. For an overall history pass rate of 86%. In science, pass rates ranged from 83% in grade 8 to 89% in chemistry. All science pass rates were above 80% for an overall science pass rate of 85%. To provide perspective, I did compare the annual pass rates of Virginia Beach to the annual pass rates of the state of Virginia in the most recent year and the 2 previous years. The comparison can be made because they involve comparing our division results to the state results in the same given year using the same methodology. This table lists each of the SOL tests that are administered in grades 3 through 8 in Virginia Beach and across the state. Each column represents the year in which data were compared. The number in each cell represents differences between our division pass rate and the state pass rate from each listed test. For example, if you look at grade 3 reading, the pass rate for Virginia Beach students was 9 percentage points higher than the pass rate at the state level in 2017-18. Looking at the 17-18 testing year, Virginia Beach once again met or exceeded the state pass rates on all of the grade 3 through 8 SOL tests. The largest difference was in grade 4 reading, where Virginia Beach City Public Schools pass rate was 10 percentage points higher than the state pass rate. This table represents the differences on end of course assessments. Virginia Beach once again met or exceeded the state pass rates on all but 2 SOL tests, World History 1 and World History 2. The largest difference was in geography, where the Virginia Beach City Public School pass rate was 11 percentage points higher than the state. When looking at reporting group comparisons by subject, Virginia Beach City Public Schools also outperformed the state in most instances. Overall, our school division has much to be proud of. Our pass rates on all but 3 tests are above 80%, and in some cases above 90%. When reviewing all students as a group in comparison to students across the state, Virginia Beach City Public Schools outperforms the state on 27 out of 29 tests. And when looking at reporting groups by subject, Virginia Beach students outperform the state on 34 out of 40 instances. Although we are celebrating our many successes, it is important that we focus on continuous improvement. An examination of our lowest pass rates indicates that our focus continues to be grade 8 writing, grade 7 and 8 math, and world history. When reviewing subgroup data, it is clear as a division we need to continue to focus on our students with disabilities. And to address these areas, James Pohl from the Department of Teaching and Learning is here to share some of the work from their department.
Thank you, Ms. Legata. Good evening, everybody. While we are a fully accredited division and outperform the state in most areas, we remain committed to continuous improvement. Each year when SOL scores are released, the Department of Teaching and Learning partners with staff in the Office of Planning, Innovation, and Accountability to carefully review all available data. Staff then examines curriculum and instructional practices to assess areas of strengths and weakness. As a result of the analysis, and as indicated on the previous slide, 8th grade writing, 7th and 8th grade math, world history, as well as our students with disabilities subgroup are areas of focus to ensure teachers are provided with curriculum, professional learning, and the necessary resources to meet students' needs. In the area of writing, an expanded emphasis on instructional practices in writing across content areas is a focus. Opportunities for students to write across content areas and to respond to real-world scenarios have been embedded into the curriculum, specifically in performance-based tasks. In middle schools across the division, we are increasing opportunities for students to have a broader focus on content assessed on the multiple choice section of the SOL writing test, as the data points to this as an area where our students tend to need the most growth. To assist in this endeavor, instructional resources have been provided for teachers to enhance writing instruction and to offer students opportunities to independently practice learned standards. All secondary English teachers were to have participated in an essential session with a focus on writing, outlining these updates. World History and Math 7 and 8 courses have new state standards, and as such, the curriculum was rewritten to ensure a tight alignment. These fully redesigned curriculum have increased opportunities for rigor through the use of performance-based tasks and resources which are connected to the 5 C's and the attributes of the VBCPS profile of a graduate. Teachers were required to complete essential curriculum sessions over the summer to learn about these important changes. Special education also remains an area of instructional focus. As presented to the board in the spring, the Special Education 5-year plan includes building the capacity of teachers to provide specially designed instruction. For this reason, coordinators and instructional specialists in the Office of Programs for Exceptional Children were reorganized to specifically focus on areas that fall under this domain. In the previous support model, schools were assigned one coordinator and one instructional specialist to support them in all aspects of special education. With the reorganization, schools now have 2 coordinators and an instructional specialist assigned to them. One coordinator and the instructional specialist is solely assigned to them for instruction, and the other coordinator for compliance. During the last school year and moving forward, coordinators and specialists from content areas and from the Office of Programs of Exceptional Children collaborated to create and implement professional development on specially designed instruction. These sessions were offered at the Administrators Conference this summer and will be offered in many of our schools this year to assist with instructional practice to meet the standards of our special education population. While this information is not all-encompassing of the work in teaching and learning, we hope it provides the board with an overview of our efforts to address continuous instructional improvement. Thank you for this opportunity to share our data. If you have any questions, the Office of Planning, Innovation, and Accountability, as well as the Department of Teaching and Learning, will be happy to answer them at this time.
Do we have any comments or suggestions or questions? Mrs. Weems?
Thank you, and we did hear this in our workshop, so I won't repeat those questions, but I appreciate the report. So when you compared us to everybody else in the state, that is every school division, no matter how small or large?
Yes.
It's all 100, and how many do we have, 40 something?
Somewhere around there,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Now, do you have the comparison like between our schools and our region? Like Chesapeake, or do you have individual or us in Fairfax? Or?
I don't have that for you tonight, but I can get that for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd kind of like to see some of those, and I'll get in touch with you with that. And then also with the special education, I'm so glad that we've got the 5-year program, of course, and that's one of our priorities this coming year because that gap is quite large. But so the special education numbers include any student with an IEP. It can be in the OHI category that maybe the only thing that student has is extra time on a test, to a more challenging student that's maybe in the PA annex. So it's everybody put together. Okay. All right, just wanted to be clear on that, but no 504s.
No 504s, not in this data.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Felton?
Dr. Poe, you mentioned where we fell short with World History 1 and 2, low school with World History, and you mentioned that we have a new curriculum that has been added. Could you give me some highlight on the new curriculum and what's involved with that curriculum with the World History?
Sure. So first of all, the new standards that have come out, we're now using the 2015 standards in full implementation this year. We've been in a crosswalk year for the past 2 years, but this is the first year we're fully implementing those. And with that, we redesigned the curriculum with the use of Schoology, the new learning management system we have, to where we were able to really break up different learning objects and in a variety of different tools teachers can use in the classroom to meet different students' needs as well. So it might be 3 or 4 different concepts or ideas that they can use that cover the same standard, but they would use it with different groups of students possibly to meet their needs better.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. McLeod?
I'm sorry I didn't pay attention to the slide number. But regarding math, I always find it interesting that, because am I right, it's Algebra 1, Geometry, then Algebra 2. So it always baffles me that we can get, we were like 10 points ahead of everywhere else in geometry, but we go back and look, and then Algebra 2 and 1 is so much lower. Do we ever look at what happens in that math curriculum? Why is it we seem to have that? I mean, it's still great. We're above the state averages. Don't get me wrong there. But I'm curious if we ever break down some of that information to try to figure out why do we excel at, higher at geometry than algebra, those kind of things.
So as a team, we continuously look at the data each year that comes back, and we reevaluate what's in the curriculum and what do we need to strengthen, and where are we already strong, and that helps us also drive our professional development during the year. The work we would do with PLCs at each school level, and we try to differentiate that by school to meet their needs. But it really comes down to when you look at the different standards that we're hitting or missing. And the changes each year, and how do we really support that each year, what the students know or what they don't know. So we absolutely look at the curriculum each year and try to emphasize the growth where it needs to be the most as we go.
I know in K through 8, I feel like it's fair. When I always read these, Dr. Robertson always point this out, as I read diagonally. because you can't compare last year's fourth graders to this year's fourth graders. So I want to compare them to themselves, to when they were in third grade and when they were in second grade. But in high school, it's kind of tricky to do that, isn't it? Because it could be a senior taking this, or it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, conceptually not as smooth as it does
Right.
at the middle levels and the elementary levels.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Do you have any others? Thank you.
So, Ms. Williams, I do have some data that I crunched. Fairfax.
Mm-hmm.
So we outperformed Fairfax by 5 points in reading.
Yeah.
When you look at the reading scores between Fairfax, Loudoun County, Prince William, Chesterfield, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach, we had the highest reading scores. Math, we outperformed Fairfax by 2 points and had the highest math scores of those groups. In science, we outperformed Fairfax by 1 point, and in social studies, Fairfax outperformed us by 2 points. With regard to locally, Chesapeake, we outperformed Chesapeake. We outperformed Chesapeake by 3 points in reading, 1 point in math. They outperformed us by 2 points in science and social studies.
Not that we're competing, but that's more to celebrate.
Not that I'm competitive or anything, but that'd be something great to put on our website, Lauren.
I also
but
might
not that we're
point out that
competitive.
we have 100% full A credit school division.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, of course, but just let's keep adding on. There's nothing about adding on, right?
Celebrating our accomplishments.
So I would love those, because when people, we should be stronger than some of our, school divisions that are in other places and much smaller. But that's just excellent stuff. I would love to see a little page of that somewhere on our website. Thank you.
Just another feat that our teachers do. We have the best teachers.
Great students and parents.
Madam Chair,
Mrs.
Mr.
Linetti?
Vice Chair.
Thank you.
School board members and Dr. Spence, I'm Cammie Linetti, School Board Legal Counsel. On behalf of the Policy Review Committee, I'll be presenting the 4 recommendations from the Policy Review Committee's last meeting. The first one is Policy 389. This is the general contract execution policy. We've been working with this policy a lot in the last year or so. One of the things that the Mr. Hansaker, Mr. Beardsley, and Ms. Pate have been working on is updating the procedures for how they're doing contracts. They realize that some of the procedures are outdated. And so some of the changes you're seeing here are just to bring this up to normal procedure levels. A lot has to do with the amount of contracts when they have to go to different individuals to be reviewed. So in Policy 389, the first section you're going to see is Section C. They're talking about physical notes and appropriation, non-appropriation clauses. Those are things that we do to protect the school division and making sure that each contract, the money's protected for, and also that you can't spend beyond what the school division has. There's some minor changes in Section D, and it flips over in there. And one of the bigger areas is in Section E, contracting authority for schools and departments. They realized that some of the language in here didn't actually make sense and also was not consistent with how they were doing it. So significant in this area is Section B that talks about Section E1. B, any contracted good for service that are covered by a term pricing agreement established by the Office of Purchasing. Division T and pricing agreement exists for goods or services. The school department must use that established agreement. We're making sure that they're following the established agreements that we have with them so that the contracts remain consistent. There were some significant cutouts following further down into that particular section just to make them consistent with how they're currently doing business. Those would be the end of the recommendations for 389. Policy 633 falls under the instruction. We were working on all the instruction policies last year. You saw most of the Section 6 policies. After looking at it, Ms. Rye was made sure that we had gone back to the necessary constituents, and one of them was the Special Education Advisory Committee. We wanted to make sure that they had taken another look at this section. So this is coming a little bit later than the other policies in the instruction area. Most of what's in this area are just grammatical changes, and Ms. Felton, it was pointed out to me, we did miss the term students and children sometimes, and we'll go correct that for the next one. We know there's a couple changes on there. Some of the things you see consistent in here have to do with the federal requirements, CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. If you see under subsection A13, there's a section about informing parents about alternative assessments and the participation in them. That is a requirement by federal code. They felt it was necessary that we put that in there so that it's reflected to the parents and that it recognizes that the school division recognizes an obligation to the parents.
Also in subsection C6, also a required notice having to do with written notice describing placement, changes in place in least restrictive environment. Those are normally part of our practice, but it's recommended by SEAC that we go ahead and add that section, also referring to the Code of Federal Regulation. Otherwise, this policy has generally been updated and for grammatical errors, but no significant changes. Moving on to policy 736, it was brought to our attention actually by Ms. Manning that we had some policies and procedures in schools that were not necessarily being followed appropriately. So we took a closer look at what was going on and these policies on there. One of them had to do with soliciting funds from individuals, soliciting from and by school personnel. So we made a couple of updates to this one. One of the particular areas that we're seeing starting to show up more in schools is crowdsourcing or online funding. On there, we wanted to make sure that we were taking control of those issues going on. The concern would be if an individual employee was doing online crowdsourcing, online fundraising, that it got the approval of the supervisors. So we knew if that money was being raised on behalf of the school division, it was actually being used for school division purposes. That's a new add to this policy, so we've added that in there. We've also realized that in some of the fundraising procedures that we have, we do use some instructional time, not significant, but there are times during the day some of these activities happen during schools. Scholastic book fairs are one of those. Other things happen during schools. And although we generally have prohibited cash prizes or incentives, there are limited circumstances when they are used, and after looking at the department recommended that we added that to this policy. So that's been added to policy 736. Policy 743 specifically has to do with fundraising by students in here. Same concept, a little bit different. We realize that there are far more circumstances under which students are actually raising money for us, and we wanted to make sure we were capturing some of those and limiting when they were doing them. Again, we want to limit the use of prizes and fundraising. That was added in there. Limited use of instructional time. We added in a restriction that came from the Healthy Hungry Food Kids Act, what limits our ability to sell food that's considered less nutritious on there. Now, one of the things people think this means is that you cannot sell cookie dough, pizza, things, ice cream. That's what you're selling. You actually can, but there are limited circumstances. Each school has to make that determination. The superintendent can open that up for certain areas. However, fundraising activities that take place outside of the school, so if you've got a PTA or booster club that's selling it outside the school, they can sell that. That does not fall under there. It's things that are sold in school by the students. There are opportunities to do it, but this is just recognizing that we have to follow the federal regulations. We want to make sure it's clear that charitable gaming is, you must follow the state rules on that. So sometimes this is a profitable area, but often people don't realize that we have state regulations on that. Also want to point out that fundraising involving weapons, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, medication, some of the things are also not consistent with school board policies. If we're prohibiting other areas, we don't want to make sure and want that to happen also while we're doing our fundraising. Further down in this is fundraising from crowdsourcing, again mentioned on there, if they're crowdsourcing, so we don't have students individually doing crowdsourcing. There have been issues around the country where crowdsourcing and online fundraising has been misused. Again, we want to make sure students were following the same regulations. Again, it's not prohibited. We just needed approval either by the superintendent's office or a supervisor handling that. And a few more restrictions were put in there. So this is expanding this policy dramatically from what we've had in the past. We think it better captures where we are currently in this day and age, and also a few more protections for our students and staff members. If there are any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer them, or we can refer them to the Policy Review Committee members.
Ms. McLeod? Mrs. Linetti, this, you brought it up, and it really doesn't have anything specific to do with the policy, but you brought up the Healthy Hungry Kids Act and what can and cannot be done in schools for the fundraising, and I thought that it just provided a quick opportunity to explain that to everyone.
The Healthy Hungry Food Kids Act has a lot of restrictions. It has to do a lot with our meals on there. If you've ever talked with the folks over food services, their job is extremely complex in figuring out the amount of nutrition that can be served in each meal, and balancing out. They have a set time period that they have to balance those meals out, how much they can serve, how many calories, between the carbohydrates, the fats, all that's covered under this. So it's a fairly complex system that they have on there. One of the other restrictions was that schools not sell the ice cream, the French fries. I know when my oldest child was out there, he bought French fries and ice cream for every meal at that point, and they made a lot of money doing that. I will point out, that's why you don't see soda anymore. And during that time period, some of those restrictions coming from the federal government had restricted that, so you don't see those things. A lot of times, sometimes they're in schools, but they're shut down during the day. You cannot purchase that stuff on there. That comes out of that act. One of the other restrictions was that you not sell things. A lot of times kids are selling candy bars in school. They were selling homemade cupcakes, and things like that, which also would make the nutritional guidelines. Initially, it was not allowed. At some kickback and going through the regulations at the federal level, people realized that these are significant fundraisers for us, and so they talked to it. And so what they compromise is that each school division can limit the amount. You have to have a limited amount. You set that amount, and then you determine how many times a year you're allowed to do that. So you can do that, and they really discourage it being used during the school day. You also see discouragement. We don't want to offer kids candy before they're doing, or soda before a test, something like that. Some of those are all restrictions of the Healthy Hungry Free Kids Act. So the intent was to help develop healthy lifetime habits for the students on there, and have our staff members recognizing that. It did expand with time to make sure that the booster organizations, the parents coming in, were also trying to keep consistent with what those federal regulations were.
As my kids finished up school, that became very difficult for us to understand.
I have a very upset 17-year-old who doesn't eat pizza at school anymore.
Exactly, yeah. No, not so much for in the lunchroom, but to be able to go and raise money for an SCA by selling cupcakes and those kind of things, it was rather frustrating. It's nice there's a little bit of leniency to it, but I thought it was a good opportunity to point that out, especially at the beginning of a new school year. Thank you.
Mrs. Lenetti, would you explain to the board what the committee decided about how these things are moving forward?
We seem to have some confusion sometimes as to what policies and regulations are going forward. So after talking with the policy review committee, we wanted to clarify for board members what we understand the procedure to be. We present the policy and regulations to you on the information agendas. We answer questions. There is an opportunity for us to change or alter things if you think it's necessary, but if we are not hearing it at the when we present on information, it is the intent that it will then go on to the consent agenda. We can't have minor changes that are fixed between them, but if it is a significant change on there, it will become incumbent upon the school board member seeking that change to contact Mrs. Rye to explain that to us. We can look at it again. If we don't get it, if we don't hear from you, you mentioned here, you could mention it during this meeting. It will go to Mrs. Rye, or you need to contact Mrs. Rye. If it's not brought to us and you do not bring us a change, this will go on the next school board meeting for consent. If at that point you want to make a change, it will be necessary for you to make a motion to drop it down to action, and we will vote on it. We seem to be kicking back and forth some policies and regulations back and forth to PRC and back to the school board, and it's not 100% clear why we're doing that sometimes. We want to make it clear what the procedure was. So after hearing these four tonight, if you have concerns, please bring them up to Mrs. Rye. You can also direct it to Dr. Bergen and myself. We'll get it back. If we think it's significant, we will take it to the policy review committee. If it's a minor grammatical thing, please let us know. We can correct that before the next meeting. Otherwise, they will go, as you've seen them tonight, on the consent agenda at the next meeting.
So does everybody understand? I think, Mrs. Fry, would you like to explain further? It's my understanding that if we do not hear from you, all of these policies will go to consent agenda, and if we do hear from you, they will still be on the agenda, but they will be under action so that the person can make a motion to make the changes. Ms. McLeod.
I just want to, I agree with the process, and I agree that that's the appropriate way to do it. However, I do believe that even if it would appear on the agenda under consent, that every school board member has the right to ask for it to be put on action, so in an individual policy. Just making sure that part is clear.
I think that's part of our standing rules. We usually always do that anyway.
Right.
We could always amend the agenda and bring it down to action.
But there's a possibility that a person wasn't at the previous meeting and that kind of thing. But it's their job to, in between meetings, to catch up on everything. So.
That's why it's important. If you have questions while you're looking at your agenda, let us know. The way we've scheduled it, the policy review committee meetings almost always follow right after after school board meeting, so we have time to take it back if necessary. But if you wait till a day or two beforehand, it may not give us significant time to get back to the departments, make the adjustments, and get an agenda. So please plan ahead of time so we can answer your questions and address it.
Mrs. Rye.
I mean, the only thing I would add is just to point out the obvious, that there have been certain policies that very legitimately needed to go back to policy review committee, and some multiple times. But,
all right. We understand that. But we also know that we have a significant amount of policies that we have to get through, and hours and hours of work are going on in the policy committee, trying to figure out exact wording on some of these things. And then when it gets kicked back to the policy committee, that slows it down. And that means that we're not covering the number of policies that we need to be covering to get through all of them. I believe we were
600
supposed to be doing 10 a month. Is that correct?
Probably more. You're required by the SOAs every 5 years to review your policies with your bylaws, policy, and regulations. Before we started Millennium, you had 678, which means you need to kick through well over 100 some a year. So if we stay roughly 10 or more, we might make it. Obviously, some of them are more significant than others. So it's important that we stay on track because we do have to catch up on some of them that we haven't looked at in a long time.
Right. Thank you.
I have to add, really, policies like a website, it's never done. It'll be ongoing forever and ever and
the way
ever.
we've
It's
scheduled
like a
out every
CIP
5
plan.
years.
Where's Tony? Yeah, it's always going to be ongoing.
You will be on a
Thank you.
continuous 5-year plan from here on.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any standing, I'm sorry. Do we have any standing committee reports? Thank you. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. The Legislative Committee will resume its work ahead of the 2019 General Assembly session with a meeting on September 25th to begin the draft of this board's legislative agenda. All members of the board have been emailed an opportunity to submit legislative items for the committee to consider. I ask that these items be submitted by September 24th. As November's VSBA's Take Your Legislator to School Month, we will be inviting all members of our General Assembly delegation to join with members of the board and senior staff in touring various schools throughout the division. Following our Legislative Committee meeting on the 25th, members of the board will receive a schedule of these tours and provided an opportunity to participate as they are able.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Mrs. Riggs?
The Sister City Committee met this past week. We are presenting our youth ambassador for this year at the City Council next Tuesday night, and who is Emily Myers from Tallwood. We are also getting ready to kick off for the coming year, choosing our new youth ambassador. So we will be reaching out to all of the high schools, the principals, the guidance counselors, anyone that we can reach out to get them interested in letting their students know that this is a significant opportunity for their students to be able to perform in some kind of arts, to compete to become the next ambassador, youth ambassador for next year. So that'll be after the 24th of September.
Thank you, Ms. Riggs. Mrs. Rye?
Okay, so our policy committee was scheduled to meet Thursday, and we will be posting a rescheduled date very shortly.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, that concludes our formal meeting. Now, Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on non-agenda items this evening? Thank you.